Greetings. My name is Annette Weeks. I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Entrepreneurship and the Center for Workforce Development here at Missouri Western's Craig School of Business. So we're going to take on a very important topic today of business succession. Business transition within our communities is very important for the health of our economy. Startup businesses is very important as well, but also we need to retain the businesses that we have. And helping transfer those to new ownership is of utmost importance. So today we're going to take on this topic of business succession and transitioning your business to new owners. So I am going to share my screen here, right here, and then we will get started. Now, share. Let's see how we're doing here. We're gonna then come to this one. And we're off and running. So succession planning is key to protecting your company, your family, and your employees. Having a business plan in place is vital to the continuation of your business. So it happens across the country. Longtime businesses closes its door because it has no successor in place, leaving our communities with the empty storefronts. So if you're ever on Main Street or other areas of town and you see a business close their doors, it's actually heartbreaking. So that's what we're wanting to do, is to help capture those situations and help them understand there's opportunities to transfer it to new owners. So what happens many times is people own the businesses for, 15, 20, 30 years, and they're just kind of wore out from it. And all of us know this last year and a half coming out of the pandemic has been exhausting for entrepreneurs, no matter which business you're in. So we have business owners right now that are ready to retire and they're just kind of tired from it. So our main takeaway from today is that there's support and there's steps in helping you, if you follow it, to transfer your business to new ownership. The vitality of a successful economy depends on as much on maintaining these existing businesses as we talked about as attracting new ones. And here we go, there's resources available to help you find a new heir. And it's essential to plan this before you're ready for it. So I've worked with business owners that come in and they just say, I'm done. I'm wore out. I just want to be done in the next. And I say, so what's your timeline? They say, how about next month? And it's like, oh, that's quick. This is much easier if you think about it ahead of time versus needing to do it immediately. So planning ahead helps. So here's some statistics to let you know about. 88% of current family business owners believe that it's going to pass on to a family member if it's happening in the next 5 years. 30% of family and businesses survive into the second generation. When you get down into the third and the fourth generation, we all know that this is pretty minimal happening. So there's a real disconnect between the belief of what people think is going to happen and the actuality. When I have people come in here to start new businesses, many times they tell me that they're starting this new business so that they have something to pass on to their children. So I try to, in discussions with them, let them know the statistics, and though that might be a great happening for within their family, many times it doesn't happen that way. And there's numerous reasons for this. There's different personalities that children have, different wherewithal, different interests. Sometimes they see their parents working as business owners and the passion that had to go into starting that they don't feel that passion for it. So sometimes we're very fortunate. And, as we think about around our community and region, there's many businesses that have transferred to multi-generational, but most of the time it doesn't work that way. So succession planning is twofold. One aspect is emotional. It's about leaving the legacy. It's about the heart. So when entrepreneurs start a business, the reason they're so successful is they're very passionate about this. They very much take it personal. They're willing to put all this time and energy into it. But when it goes to sell, that's also that can be on the flip side, a detriment to selling. And then the second aspect is financial. How much income are you needing for retirement if retirement's the reason you're selling? Sometimes people are selling just to move on to something else. But so the two aspects is one is emotional and one is financial. So keep that in mind as you're working through your process. So I have 5 steps listed here that I'm going to present to you that's important that you go through in thinking about transferring your business. Step 1. So decide an estimated timeline for the sale. You know, is it immediate? Is it an urgency that something's happened and you have to do it immediately? Or is it sometime over the next couple of years? And so the hope is it's not immediate and you have some time to plan forward here. But I also want to make mention, though you might think it's not till 2 or 3 years out, also be open for the opportunity if it comes along faster than that. So I can think of at least 2 in the last couple of years that we had a buyer for them and it was so close to being done and ready. And at the last minute, the seller backed out because they got cold feet. They were worried about selling. They were worried about what they're going to do in their retirement. So as you're planning here, plan out by the time you need it to be done, but also think about what if the right person comes along before that? Are you willing to sell and transfer it even earlier if that's possible? Because you never know when the right buyer comes along again. So step 2, prepare and gather all supporting documents. So start gathering everything that's going to be needed in the transference of this. You know, this includes any leases and it includes, you know, profit and losses for the last many years. It includes tax returns for the last at least 3 years, balance sheets, any of that that's going to be needed. Start gathering that together ahead of time. Here's the other one, determine the selling price. So there's different formulas in determining a selling price, but I'm going to list some of the things you need to take in account when you're figuring, you know, when you're coming up with your asking price for it. So what are the assets? Have you listed out all the assets of the business and put a value to them? And when you're putting a value to them, make sure you're thinking about what the current value is, not what you bought it for. So assets, current value. Inventory is the same as well. What is the amount you have in inventory? And again, it's what's usable. So we help construction companies. And so when a buyer comes in to think about buying the construction company or heating and cooling, and they start looking at inventory, well, the seller might put value to some stuff that they've had in that back room for 5 or 10 years, but they're not using. So be aware of that it's usable current inventory that you're putting the value on. Also profit, what's the company been profiting? That's what they'll be looking at as well. You know, if you have a client list, you can, you know, there's also some to blue sky. I will say it's much harder for a seller to get financing on the blue sky client list, that type part of the sale. So keeping that in mind as you're thinking about what you want to ask when you're getting ready to sell the business too. And then we talk about who's going to buy the business. And this is what really stumps some people who's thinking about transferring, and this is where they stop. They just don't even know who to sell it to. So let's talk about a few pockets of people to make sure to look at. So you're going to sit and make a list of potential successors. I just had someone in recently who wanted to sell their business and they couldn't think of anyone. Well, we went through these steps and the next thing we knew they had 10 people listed that could be potential that they were going to follow up with to tell about. Now, some people don't like to let the cat out of the bag when they're wanting to sell. They don't want people to know. They're afraid that they'll lose clients. They're afraid they're letting people down. So, but you know, at some point you got to be able to communicate to let a buyer know that there's potential in buying this. So, you know, the first one we talk about is family. So is there anyone within your family circle? Is there siblings? Is there children? Is there nieces or nephew that's had anything to do with the business that might be interested? And then there's employees. Is there employees or key employees or past employees that might be interested in owning the business that has awareness of what's going on? Colleagues, this can be competitors, this can be kind of in industries that's similar, but this would add to their portfolio. Be thinking of them. And then there's any of your customers, any regular customers that come that share the interest in the product or the service that you do. Can you think of any of them that might be interested? And what you're going to do is you're going to list it out, and then you have to be proactive and go to them. And how you communicate with them is up to you. You can be very upfront. I eventually want to sell this business. I wanted to give you an opportunity to know about it. You can go that way. You can go about it in a lighter way that you can just laugh and say, hey, I'd sell this business for the right price, so, and so making lighter issue, not making it sound that it has to be immediate or imminent. So, but if you look at these pools, and then if not this, then you need to go wider. And, there's possibilities of realtors or brokers or some of those that will help you with this. I will say on this, we also have a web page where you can post a business that you want to transfer. It's just a posting. You're putting it up there, and then we're letting any inquiries straight to you. So it's the discussions are between the two of you. So that web page is on the Center for Entrepreneurship at Missouri Western State University. You can Google that and go there and see what postings we already have on there. And then step 5 is define the process of transference of your ownership. How is this going to happen? Is it going to be an immediate sale? Is it going to be over time? Is there mentorship and training involved in it? What's the compensation on that? So those are all things to define on the transference of ownership. So those were the 5 steps that I wanted to tell you about, but there's some also critical considerations that I want to touch on as well. So, I've been doing this for almost 16 years now of helping businesses transfer to new ownership. So here's a few things of tidbits I wanted to also add on. Think about creating a business plan. If you don't already currently have a business plan, it's a good idea to create a business plan. So it could be a full scope plan, or it could just be a 1-page overview. But the reason this is helpful is you've got so much information in your head about this business. Who's better to write the plan than it's you? So I'll think about what you're currently doing and what it could potentially be doing. And the value of you doing this is that potential part, because though you may not be doing it for whatever reasons, maybe you've made enough money over the last several years, you haven't had to, or you just wore out and didn't have the energy, but ways that could improve your business. You just haven't got around to it. Put it in writing, because that helps the buyer when they're going to the banker to show ways that they're going to grow the business once they purchase it and the potential that it has. So next thing is when you're talking about that valuation, here guys, keep your eye on the ball. So the price of your business is based on the success of your business. So though you might be running out of energy or losing interest or putting one toe into the next stage of life, you got to keep your eye on the ball to keep the valuation what it currently is. Or maybe you need to grow it, through this pandemic. Many businesses have had a step back in sales. So when you're figuring out that valuation, if you're going off of profits, and banks have, sometimes they're taking into that consideration, and sometimes depending on the business, they're just giving a break to 2020. But some have chosen, after they look at what their business is worth, maybe to wait a year or two to get those sales back up or grow the sales where it could be, has potential, so that they then could ask more for the business and it's supported through the financials. And then it's just determine what exactly you are selling. Is there vehicles involved? Is there, how about website, Facebook, cell phones, all things like that? What exactly is going with the sale of the business? If you own the building it's in, are you retaining the building? And maybe they're going to lease from you with the first right to purchase it if you ever want to sell it. So there's many options in that too. And okay, and here's one. Are you willing to own or finance? So many times when people come in and I bring this up to them, they say, oh no, we don't want to own or finance. And so I encourage them to go talk to their accountants and to their lawyers about, are there advantages to selling over time, tax advantages for them, depending on their situation? And so, sometimes they'll come back and say, okay, maybe I will owner finance. Keep in mind, you don't have to fully owner finance always, though sometimes that helps if they can't get financing and you're very encouraging and supportive of this buyer. If you owner finance it for a year, then the bank is much more willing to take that on after a year because this new owner has shown success in that. But another option is maybe you're just partially owner financing it. Maybe you're just doing some gap funding. If your business is selling for 100,000, you tell them to, go find financing for 80,000 and you'll owner finance 20,000 of it. So, but there's many different ways to finance. So I'm just bringing that to you as well. And as I'm going through any of this, remember, we can help you through this. We've done it many times through the years. Center for Entrepreneurship services are free. We can help you through this. Here's another one I want to point out is communication. If it's a family-owned business, especially with spouse, children, siblings, make sure everyone is on board. Several years ago, I helped with a buyer who was purchasing it, and we had gone months with working this agreement through. What was included, negotiated selling price, had lawyers involved, had all that in agreement until it came down to there was another partner. We didn't know there was a partner in the business. And when we got down to the final wire, the partner nixed it. So because they hadn't been included. So it was actually very devastating to the buyer. And so just make sure everybody is on board and communicate on this. Also, your employees, when you let key employees know that you're thinking about selling the business. Some people say it up front. I've got one who's working to sell and they're telling their employees from the get-go. They say, we probably won't be selling for a couple of years, but we will be selling and you employees are a priority to us. And so they've been very upfront. I've worked with others who feel very guarded and haven't, they don't tell their employees until they're done. So that's up to you and your comfortability with your employees. But, have a plan in place. And customers. When do you tell your customers, if you do sell it, how are you letting them know of the sale? Many times, if there's a good relationship between the buyer and the seller, then they come up with their top clients and they go visit them personally so that they can create a smooth transition between ownership with the customers as well. It also can be emails, it can be letters sent to them. There's many ways, but make sure it's well thought through, especially with that communication with your family and partners and that part of it. Because I've seen many hurt feelings because people haven't been open and communicated openly over it. Management succession, as you're training, what is that process? How long are you willing to train? Is it a month? Is it 6 months? I have some that will stay on for a couple months, but then they turn it into a consulting and then they charge for after so many months of help within the business. So, you just have to determine that ahead of time, what you're comfortable with. And then here's a big one. Make sure you have a team of advisors. As we said at the beginning, this can be very emotional and you don't want to base this off of emotions. So if you create your team of advisors to help you on this, it makes the transition much easier and gets you to your goal of where you want to be. So make sure your accountant, your attorney, your banker, an investment planner, and a business advisor is on this team. They're willing to help. We're here for you. Just make sure you set that team of advisors up. So again, can't stress enough, now is the time to plan. Think ahead. You have a much higher rate of success if you're planning it versus it's forced upon you. So with that said, again, I'm Annette Weeks, Executive Director here at the Center for Entrepreneurship at Craig School of Business. Our services are free and confidential. If we can help you in any way, please let us know. Thanks.